My name is Janelle Thompson, and I'm about to tell you the story of the most embarrassing night of my entire parenting life. The night my Auntie Beverly showed up drunk to my son's parent-teacher conference. And honey, when I say drunk, I don't mean tipsy. I don't mean she had a little wine with dinner. I mean she rolled up to Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, smelling like she bathed in Hennessy and regret, wearing one shoe and carrying the other, with her wig sitting on her head like a hat somebody threw at her from across the room. But before I get into how we got there, let me paint you a picture of my life. I'm a single mother of two. My oldest is Javon. He's 12, smart as a whip but stubborn as a mule. My youngest is Kiana. She's 8, and she's basically me in miniature, which means she's got way too much mouth for her own good. Their father, well, let's just say he's somewhere in Atlanta living his best life while I'm here in Chicago living my stressed life. I work 2 jobs. During the day, I'm a medical billing specialist at Rush University Medical Center. At night, 3 times a week, I work the front desk at a gym in River North where rich white people pay $200 a month to run on treadmills they could run on for free outside. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, I'm busy, I'm tired, and I'm doing the absolute best I can with what I got. Now, Auntie Beverly. Lord have mercy. Where do I even start with Auntie Beverly? She's not technically my aunt. She's my mother's best friend from college. But in the Black community, if an older woman has been in your life long enough and loves you hard enough, she becomes your auntie. That's just how it works. Auntie Beverly has been in my life since I was in diapers. She was at my high school graduation, crying louder than my own mama. She threw my baby shower when I was pregnant with Javon, spent her whole paycheck on decorations and a cake shaped like a baby bottle. When my mama passed away 5 years ago from breast cancer, Auntie Beverly was the one who helped me plan the funeral because I was too torn up to think straight. She picked out the casket, chose the flowers, and stood up at the podium to deliver a eulogy that had the whole church on their feet. So yeah, Auntie Beverly is family, real family. The kind you can't quit even when you want to. The kind that's woven into the fabric of your entire existence. But here's the thing about Auntie Beverly. She likes to drink. And I don't mean she enjoys a cocktail at Sunday brunch. I mean she drinks like it's her job, her hobby, and her spiritual practice all rolled into one. Vodka in the morning, usually mixed with orange juice so she can pretend it's healthy. Wine in the afternoon, straight from the bottle because who has time for glasses? Whiskey at night, the cheap kind that comes in a plastic bottle and burns your throat on the way down. She's what you might call a professional alcoholic. Except she's never held down a job long enough to be professional at anything except showing up late and showing out. My mama used to make excuses for her. She'd say, Beverly's going through something. Beverly's had a hard life. Beverly just needs time to get herself together. And for years, I believed that. I believed that Auntie Beverly was one good break away from turning her life around. One good man. One good opportunity. One good reason to put the bottle down. See, what you need to understand is that my mama and Auntie Beverly went way back. They met freshman year at Chicago State University in 1978. My mama was studying to be a nurse, and Beverly was majoring in English because she wanted to be a writer. They were roommates in the dorms, and my mama used to tell me stories about how Beverly was the life of every party, how she could walk into a room and light it up just by smiling. How she had this infectious laugh that made everyone around her feel like they were in on the joke. Beverly was beautiful back then, too. My mama showed me pictures. Beverly had this gorgeous afro that framed her face like a halo. She had high cheekbones, full lips, and these eyes that sparkled with mischief and intelligence. Men were always trying to talk to her, but she was picky. She had standards. She had dreams. My mama said Beverly was the smartest person she ever met. She could quote James Baldwin and Toni Morrison from memory. She wrote poetry that made people cry. She was going to be somebody. Everybody knew it. Everybody believed it. And then she met Raymond. Raymond was a junior, a smooth-talking brother from Detroit with a nice car and even nicer words. He told Beverly she was beautiful. He told her she was special. He told her he was going to marry her someday and give her everything she ever wanted. And Beverly, for all her intelligence and wit and standards, fell for it. Fell hard. They dated for 2 years. Beverly stopped going to her writing workshops, stopped submitting her poetry to literary magazines, stopped hanging out with my mama and their other friends. Everything became about Raymond. Where Raymond wanted to go, what Raymond wanted to do, who Raymond wanted her to be. My mama tried to warn her, tried to tell her that Raymond was bad news, that he was controlling, that he was changing her into someone she wasn't. But Beverly wouldn't listen. She was in love. And when you're in love at 20 years old, you think you know everything. Senior year, Beverly got pregnant. She was over the moon. She thought Raymond would propose, thought they'd get married and start their life together. Instead, Raymond told her to get rid of it. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. Said she was trying to trap him. And when she refused, when she told him she was keeping the baby, he left, just packed up his stuff and drove back to Detroit. And she never heard from him again. Beverly dropped out of school, moved back in with her parents on the west side, had the baby, a little girl she named Charisse. My mama said Beverly tried to be a good mother, tried to hold it together. But the postpartum depression hit her hard, and her parents, strict Baptists who were ashamed that their daughter had a baby out of wedlock, weren't exactly supportive. They helped with Charisse, but they never let Beverly forget that she had disappointed them, that she had thrown away her future for a man who didn't even stick around. That's when Beverly started drinking, just a little at first, a glass of wine to take the edge off, a shot of whiskey to help her sleep. But it escalated. By the time Charisse was 2, Beverly was drinking every day. By the time Charisse was 5, Beverly's parents had to step in and take custody, because Beverly couldn't take care of her anymore. My mama never gave up on her, though, even when everyone else did. Even when Beverly's own family turned their backs on her, my mama was there. She'd drive across the city to check on Beverly, bring her groceries, help her pay her rent, sit with her when she was going through withdrawals and trying to get sober. My mama believed in Beverly when Beverly stopped believing in herself. And because my mama loved Beverly, I loved Beverly. She was at every birthday party, every school play, every major milestone of my life. She was messy and loud and sometimes inappropriate, but she loved me fiercely. She called me her bonus daughter. She told me stories about my mama when they were young. She made me laugh when I was sad. She was family. When my mama got diagnosed with breast cancer, Beverly tried to get sober. Really tried. She went to AA meetings. She got a sponsor. She stayed clean for almost 6 months. She wanted to be there for my mama, wanted to take care of her the way my mama had always taken care of her. And for a while, it worked. Beverly would come over and help my mama with her medication. She'd cook meals and do laundry and keep my mama company during her chemo treatments. But after my mama died, Beverly fell apart. It was like losing my mama broke something fundamental inside her. She started drinking again, worse than before. She stopped answering my calls, stopped showing up to family gatherings. I'd drive by her apartment sometimes and see her sitting on the steps with a bottle in a brown paper bag, looking like a ghost of the woman she used to be. Still, I couldn't give up on her, because my mama wouldn't have given up on her. Because family is family, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. So I kept trying. I invited her to Sunday dinners. I called her on her birthday. I let her babysit the kids when I was in a bind, as long as I was sure she was sober. And most of the time, it was fine. Most of the time, she kept it together just enough to not be a complete disaster. Until that Tuesday in October. It started 3 days earlier when Javon's teacher, Miss Patterson, sent me an email. The subject line said, "Important, please schedule a meeting." My heart dropped into my stomach. In 12 years of parenting, I've learned that when a teacher says important, what they really mean is your child done messed up, and we need to talk about it face to face. I opened the email and read it twice to make sure I wasn't tripping. Miss Patterson wanted to meet with me to discuss Javon's recent behavior in class. She said he'd been disruptive, disrespectful, and disengaged. She said he'd been talking back to her, refusing to do his work, and influencing other students to do the same. She said if things didn't improve, she'd have no choice but to recommend him for in-school suspension. I sat at my desk at work staring at that email, feeling my blood pressure rise. Javon had been acting out at home too, slamming doors, rolling his eyes, catching attitudes over the smallest things. Last week, I asked him to take out the trash and he looked at me like I'd asked him to donate a kidney. He said, "Why do I always have to do everything?" Which was rich coming from a kid whose biggest responsibility was keeping his room clean and feeding the dog. I figured it was puberty. Figured it was him testing boundaries like kids do. His voice had started changing, getting deeper and cracking at random moments. He was growing hair in places that used to be smooth. He was becoming a young man right before my eyes, and I wasn't ready for it. I don't think any mother is ever ready to watch her baby boy turn into a teenager with opinions and attitudes and a sudden inexplicable hatred for everything she does. But now it was affecting his schoolwork, and I knew I had to nip it in the bud before it got worse. I've seen too many young black boys get labeled as troublemakers in elementary school and never recover from it. I've seen too many bright kids get pushed into the school-to-prison pipeline because adults gave up on them too soon. That wasn't going to be my son. I wouldn't allow it. I replied to Miss Patterson and set up a meeting for Tuesday evening at 7:30. Then I sent Javon a text that said, "We need to talk when I get home." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, which only irritated me more because who responds to their mother with an emoji? I didn't carry you for 9 months and push you out of my body for you to communicate with me through tiny pictures. That evening, I sat Javon down at the kitchen table and laid it out for him. I told him about the email. I told him about the meeting. And I told him that if he thought for 1 second I was going to let him throw away his education and his future because he wanted to act like he had no home training, he had another thing coming. Javon just sat there with his arms crossed, staring at the wall like I wasn't even talking to him, like I was a fly buzzing around his head that he was trying to ignore. His face had that blank expression kids get when they're trying to pretend they don't care, but I could see his jaw clenching, could see the way his leg was bouncing under the table. "Javon," I said, snapping my fingers in front of his face. "Look at me when I'm talking to you. What is going on with you? Why are you acting like this?" He finally looked at me, and for a second, I saw something flash across his face. Something that looked like hurt, but then it was gone, replaced by that same blank, defiant stare. "Nothing," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "Nothing?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Boy, don't play with me. Your teacher says you're being disrespectful. You're not doing your work. You're talking back. That doesn't sound like nothing to me." He shrugged, that universal gesture of teenage indifference that makes every parent want to pull their hair out. "Maybe she's just picking on me," he said, still not looking at me. "Picking on you?" I felt my temperature rising. "Javon, you are a black boy in America. Do you understand what that means? You don't get the luxury of acting out in school. You don't get the luxury of talking back to your teachers. The world is already looking for reasons to label you, to lock you up, to write you off, and you're out here making it easy for them." I knew I was being harsh, but I needed him to understand. I needed him to know that the rules were different for him, that what white kids could get away with, he couldn't. That one wrong move, one bad decision, one moment of attitude could follow him for the rest of his life. His jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. Just sat there looking at the table like it held the answers to all of life's mysteries. "I have a meeting with Miss Patterson on Tuesday," I continued, trying to calm my voice. "And you better hope she tells me something different than what's in this email, because if she doesn't, me and you are going to have a real serious conversation about consequences." Javon stood up from the table abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Can I go to my room now?" I wanted to yell at him. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake some sense into him, but I was tired, so tired. Tired from work, tired from worrying, tired from trying to be both mother and father to 2 kids who didn't seem to appreciate anything I did. So I just waved my hand and said, Go." He left, and I sat there at the kitchen table with my head in my hands, wondering where I went wrong, wondering if I was doing enough, wondering if I would ever be enough. The house was quiet except for the sound of Kiana in the living room watching TV, her little voice singing along to some Disney song about letting things go. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about Javon, about the meeting, about how I was going to handle this situation without making it worse. My coworker Shanice noticed me staring at my computer screen without actually doing anything and came over to my desk. "Girl, what's wrong with you?" she asked, perching on the edge of my desk. "You look like somebody died." "I wish," I said, then immediately felt bad for saying it. "It's Javon. He's been acting out at school." "Acting out how?" I told her about the email from Miss Patterson, about Javon's attitude at home, about how I felt like I was losing him and didn't know how to get him back. Shanice nodded sympathetically. She had 3 kids of her own, all teenagers, so she understood the struggle. "You need backup," she said simply. "Don't go into that meeting alone. Bring somebody with you." "Like who?" I asked. "My mama's gone. Javon's daddy is MIA. Who am I supposed to bring?" "What about your Auntie Beverly?" I looked at her like she'd suggested I bring a live grenade to the meeting. "Beverly? Are you serious?" "Why not?" Shanice asked. "Teachers always act different when there's more than one parent there. They can't be as dismissive. And Beverly doesn't take mess from anybody." "That's the problem," I said. "Beverly doesn't take mess from anybody, including me, and she's usually drunk. So tell her not to drink," Shanice said, like it was that simple. I sat with that idea for the rest of the day. The more I thought about it, the more desperate I became. I needed someone in that meeting with me, someone to advocate for Javon, someone to make sure Miss Patterson understood that my son came from a family that cared about him, even if that family was dysfunctional and messy and held together with duct tape and prayers. So that afternoon, during my lunch break, I called Auntie Beverly. The phone rang 6 times before she answered, and when she did, her voice sounded groggy, like she'd just woken up even though it was 2 in the afternoon. "Hello?" she said, her voice raspy and thick. "Beverly," I said, trying to sound cheerful and not judgmental. "It's Janelle. Did I wake you?" No, she lied. "I was just resting my eyes." "What's going on, baby?" "I need a favor." There was a pause. I could hear her moving around, probably sitting up in bed, probably reaching for whatever bottle she had on her nightstand. "What kind of favor?" she asked, her voice suddenly more alert. "I have a parent-teacher conference on Tuesday for Javon, 7:30 at his school. I need you to come with me." Another pause. Longer this time. "Why do you need me?" "Because I need support," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Javon's been acting out, and I don't know what's going on with him. His teacher wants to meet with me, and I just need someone there with me. Please." I heard her sigh, that deep exhale that people do when they're being asked to do something they don't want to do but know they probably should. "What about Kiana?" she asked. "I'll have Miss Lorraine watch her." "And you want me to come to the school?" she asked. "Like I'd suggested, we meet on Mars." "Yes, Beverly. I want you to come to the school. I want you to sit in that meeting with me and help me advocate for my son. I want you to be there because you're family and because I can't do this alone." There was another pause, and I could almost hear her internal debate. Part of her wanted to say yes because she loved me and she loved Javon, but another part of her, the part that was already thinking about her next drink, wanted to say no. "All right, baby," she finally said. "I'll be there." "Thank you," I said, relief flooding through me. "Just meet me at the school at 7:30. Don't be late." "I won't," she said. "And Beverly?" I added, my voice firm. "Please be sober." She laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the kind of laugh people do when they're offended but trying to play it off. The kind of laugh that says, "I can't believe you just said that to me, but I'm going to pretend I'm not bothered by it." "Girl, you don't have to worry about me," she said, her voice tight. "I got you." I wanted to believe her. I really did, but I'd been down this road too many times before. Too many missed birthdays. Too many broken promises. Too many phone calls where she'd swear she was on her way and then never show up. But what choice did I have? I needed someone there. I needed backup, and Beverly was all I had. Tuesday came, and I left work early to pick up Javon and Kiana from their after-school program. The drive there was tense. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Javon, who was staring out the window with his headphones on, probably listening to that rap music he loved, the kind with more curse words than actual words. Kiana, bless her heart, was chattering away in the back seat, talking about her day at school. She was telling me about how her friend Madison brought cupcakes for her birthday, and how the teacher let them have extra recess, and how she got 100 on her spelling test. "That's great, baby," I said, only half listening. "Mama, are you even paying attention?" Kiana asked, her voice indignant. "Yes, baby. You got 100 on your spelling test. I'm very proud of you. And I got to ring the bell for good behavior. That's wonderful, sweetheart." Javon turned around and looked at his sister. "Nobody cares about your stupid bell," he said. "Javon Thompson," I snapped. "Don't talk to your sister like that." He turned back to the window, and Kiana's face crumpled like she was about to cry. "It's okay, Kiana," I said gently. "Your brother is just in a bad mood. He didn't mean it." "Yes, he did," she said, her voice small. And she was right. He did mean it. Because that's what pain does. It makes you want to hurt other people so you're not the only one feeling bad. I dropped Kiana off at Miss Lorraine's house. Miss Lorraine is 73 years old, has lived on our block for 40 years, and makes the best peach cobbler in all of Chicago. She also doesn't mind watching Kiana for a few hours in exchange for me running errands for her on the weekends. That's the village in action, baby. "You be good for Miss Lorraine," I told Kiana, kissing her forehead. "I always am," Kiana said, already running into the house where Miss Lorraine had cartoons playing on the TV and probably had cookies waiting on the table. Javon and I drove to the school in silence. He sat in the passenger seat with his headphones on, staring out the window like he was trying to disappear into the upholstery. I glanced over at him every few seconds, trying to read his face, trying to figure out what was going on in that head of his, but he was locked up tight, like a safe I didn't have the combination to. We pulled into the school parking lot at 7:25. The lot was mostly empty except for a few other cars. I could see other parents walking into the building, some looking stressed, some looking annoyed, all of us there because our kids had done something that required a face-to-face conversation with a teacher. I checked my phone. No text from Auntie Beverly. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. A knot formed in my stomach, heavy and cold. "Come on," I said to Javon, getting out of the car. We walked into the school together. The hallways were empty and quiet, our footsteps echoing off the linoleum floors. The walls were covered with student artwork and motivational posters with slogans like "Dream big and you can do anything." I wondered if Javon believed any of that anymore. We headed to Miss Patterson's classroom. The door was open, and I could see her inside, sitting at her desk, reviewing papers. She was a young white woman, probably late 20s, with blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun and a cardigan that looked like it came straight from a Target ad. When she saw us, she stood up and smiled, but it was one of those tight, polite smiles that didn't quite reach her eyes. The kind of smile white women give when they're being professional but not necessarily friendly. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you so much for coming." "Of course," I said, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm but brief. "This is my son, Javon." Javon mumbled something that might have been hello and slumped into one of the student chairs, his long legs folding awkwardly in the too small seat. I sat down next to him in an equally small chair, feeling like a giant in a dollhouse. These chairs were designed for children, and here I was, a full-grown woman with a full-grown behind, trying to fit into a seat meant for a 10-year-old. Miss Patterson sat down across from us, a folder in her hands. She placed it on the desk, between us like evidence in a trial. "Are we waiting for someone else?" she asked, glancing at the door. "My aunt," I said, my voice tight. "She's running a little late." I checked my phone again. 7:30. No text, no call, nothing. Miss Patterson nodded, but I could tell she was annoyed. Her jaw tightened slightly, and she glanced at the clock on the wall. "Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? And she can join us when she arrives." "Okay," I said, even though my stomach was churning with anxiety. Even though I wanted to walk out of that room and never come back. Miss Patterson opened the folder and pulled out several papers. She laid them on the desk, turning them so I could see. They were Javon's assignments, or rather, his incomplete assignments. Math worksheets with only the first few problems filled in. Reading comprehension questions left blank. Science diagrams half drawn and abandoned. As you can see, Miss Patterson began, her voice taking on that professional teacher tone. "Javon has not been completing his work. This has been going on for about 3 weeks now." I looked at Javon, who was staring at the floor like it was the most interesting thing in the world. "Javon," I said, "why aren't you doing your work?" He shrugged. "Shrugging is not an answer," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Miss Patterson continued, "It's not just the incomplete work that concerns me. It's his behavior in class. He's been disruptive, talking when he shouldn't be, distracting other students, and when I ask him to stop, he talks back." "Talks back how?" I asked, my heart sinking. Miss Patterson pursed her lips. "Last week, I asked him to put his phone away during a leçon, and he told me, and I quote, 'You can't tell me what to do.'" My eyes went wide, and I turned to Javon. "You said that to your teacher?" Javon finally looked up, his face defiant. She was being rude. "I was enforcing a classroom rule," Miss Patterson corrected. "You were picking on me," Javon shot back. "I was not picking on you. I treat all my students the same." "No, you don't," Javon said, his voice rising. "You let Dylan use his phone all the time. Dylan has an IEP that allows him to use his phone for educational purposes," Miss Patterson said, her voice strained. "That's not fair," Javon said. "Javon," I interrupted, my voice firm. "Stop talking, right now." He crossed his arms and went back to staring at the floor, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Miss Patterson took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand that this is a difficult conversation, but I need you to understand that Javon's behavior is affecting not just his own education, but the education of his classmates. If this continues, I'll have no choice but to recommend him for in-school suspension." Suspension? The word hit me like a punch to the gut. My son had never been suspended from anything in his life. He'd never even gotten detention. "I understand," I said quietly, feeling like the worst parent in the world. "I'll talk to him. We'll figure this out." I glanced at the door again. 7:35. Where was Beverly? Miss Patterson pulled out another paper. "This is a behavior contract. If Javon signs it and follows the guidelines, we can avoid suspension. But he has to complete all his assignments, follow classroom rules, and treat me and his classmates with respect." She slid the paper across the desk toward me. I picked it up and read it, the words blurring together. All I could think about was how I was failing my son, how I was working 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table, but I was losing him in the process. "Can I have a few days to think about this?" I asked. "Of course," Miss Patterson said, "but I need a response by Friday." The classroom door suddenly flew open with a bang that made all 3 of us jump, and there she was, Auntie Beverly. She stumbled into the room like she was walking on a ship in the middle of a storm during a hurricane. Her wig was sitting on her head at a 45-degree angle, tilted so far to the left it looked like it was trying to escape. Her lipstick was smeared across her mouth and onto her cheek, bright red like a child's drawing. Her eyes were glassy and unfocused, blinking slowly like she was trying to remember where she was. And the smell. Oh my God, the smell. It was like someone had poured an entire bottle of cognac into a perfume bottle, mixed it with some kind of cheap body spray, and then sprayed it directly into my nostrils. She was wearing a leopard print blouse that was buttoned wrong, so one side hung lower than the other. Her black pants had a stain on the left leg that I didn't want to identify, and she was carrying one shoe in her hand, a gold strappy heel, while wearing its mate on her left foot. Her right foot was covered only by a knee-high stocking, with a run in it that went from her toe to her knee. "Sorry I'm late," Auntie Beverly slurred, waving her hand dramatically like she was swatting at invisible flies. "Traffic was crazy out there." Crazy. Traffic. At 7:45 at night, on the south side of Chicago, on a random Tuesday. Sure. Miss Patterson's eyes went wide, her mouth forming a perfect O of shock. Javon sank so low in his chair I thought he might slide onto the floor and disappear under the desk. And me? I wanted to evaporate. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted to be anywhere else on planet Earth, except in that classroom at that moment. Auntie Beverly attempted to walk toward us but misjudged the distance and bumped into a desk, sending it scraping across the floor with a horrible screeching sound. "Oops," she giggled. "Who put that there?" "That's been there all year," Miss Patterson said faintly. Beverly finally made it to where we were sitting and plopped down in the chair on the other side of me, missing it slightly and having to catch herself on the edge of the desk. She overcorrected and fell into the seat heavily, the plastic chair groaning under the sudden weight. "So," she said, pointing a wobbly finger at Miss Patterson, squinting one eye closed like she was trying to aim. "You're the teacher, huh?" "Yes," Miss Patterson said slowly, like she was talking to a wild animal that might attack at any moment. "I'm Miss Patterson. I teach 6th grade language arts." "Patterson," Auntie Beverly repeated, her tongue thick. Her head bobbed as she tried to focus. "You Irish?" "I'm actually German and Swedish," Miss Patterson said, her voice strained. "Because you look Irish," Auntie Beverly interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "My ex-boyfriend was Irish, Tommy O'Malley. Cheated on me with a woman named Kathleen from Kankakee. You ever been to Kankakee?" "Beverly," I hissed, grabbing her arm. "Stop talking." She turned to me, her eyes struggling to focus on my face. She blinked several times, like she was trying to remember who I was. "What?" she said, her voice too loud. "I'm just making conversation, being friendly. You always told me to be friendly. This is not the time for conversation," I said through gritted teeth. Miss Patterson cleared her throat loudly, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mrs. Thompson, maybe we should reschedule this meeting for another time. When everyone is more," she paused, searching for a diplomatic word, "available." "No," I said quickly, my voice desperate. "No, we're here now. Let's just get through this. Please." I couldn't reschedule. I couldn't go through this anxiety again. I couldn't face Javon knowing I'd failed to handle this situation. I just needed to get through the next 15 minutes. Miss Patterson looked at me like I'd just asked her to perform surgery with a butter knife, but she nodded slowly. "All right. As I was saying before, Javon has been struggling with his behavior and his assignments, and I think we need to come up with a plan to help him get back on track. Is he in trouble?" Auntie Beverly interrupted again, leaning forward so far she almost fell out of her chair. She caught herself on the desk, knocking over Miss Patterson's pencil holder. Pencils rolled across the desk and onto the floor. Miss Patterson closed her eyes and took a deep breath, probably praying for patience. "Because if he's in trouble," Beverly continued, not noticing or not caring about the pencils, "I need to know what he did. Because this boy right here," she turned and pointed at Javon with the shoe she was still holding, nearly hitting him in the face with it, "is a good boy. A real good boy. Smart. Respectful. Got a good head on his shoulders. And if you're sitting here trying to make him out to be some kind of thug or troublemaker, we're gonna have a problem." "Beverly," I said, louder this time, my face burning with humiliation. "Please, just let her talk." Auntie Beverly sat back in her chair with a huff, crossing her arms. The shoe dangled from her hand. "Fine, go ahead, talk. I'm listening." Miss Patterson took another deep breath, clearly regretting every decision that led her to this moment. She probably went to college thinking she'd inspire young minds and change lives. She probably never imagined she'd be sitting across from a drunk woman holding one shoe and smelling like a distillery. "Javon has been disruptive in class," Miss Patterson said carefully, enunciating each word. "He's been disrespectful to me and to his classmates. He's been refusing to complete his assignments, and his grades have dropped significantly over the past month. Disrespectful? Auntie Beverly said, her voice rising. She leaned forward again. How? What did he say? Did he curse at you? No, he didn't curse, Miss Patterson said. Did he threaten you? No. Did he put his hands on you? Of course not. Then what's the problem? Beverly demanded. What did he actually do? He's been talking back, refusing to follow directions, and when I asked him to put his phone away during class, he told me I couldn't tell him what to do. Auntie Beverly was quiet for a moment, processing this information with her alcohol-soaked brain. Then she said, Maybe you're not giving good directions. Excuse me? Miss Patterson's voice went up an octave. Beverly, that's enough, I said, my voice shaking. I'm just saying, Auntie Beverly continued, undeterred. Sometimes these teachers don't know how to talk to black kids. They expect them to sit down and shut up and be robots, like they're supposed to just take whatever's thrown at them and not have any feelings about it. But that's not how we raise our kids. We raise them to have voices, to stand up for themselves, to question things that don't make sense. Miss Patterson's face turned red. I assure you, I know how to communicate with all my students, regardless of their background. I treat everyone equally. Equally? Beverly laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Let me tell you something about equal. Equal doesn't mean fair. Equal means you treat everybody the same, even when they need different things. That boy right there, she pointed at Javon again with her shoe. He's dealing with stuff you can't even imagine. His daddy left, his grandmama died, his mama's working herself to death, trying to keep food on the table, and you want him to sit in your classroom and pretend like everything's fine, like he doesn't have feelings, like he's not carrying weight that no 12-year-old should have to carry? The room went silent. Even in her drunken state, Auntie Beverly had said something true, something I'd been too afraid to acknowledge. Miss Patterson's expression softened slightly. I understand that Javon may be dealing with challenges at home. Many of my students are. But that doesn't give him permission to be disruptive in my classroom. Auntie Beverly leaned back in her chair, the fight going out of her. You're right, she said quietly. You're absolutely right. But maybe cut the boy some slack, you know? Maybe ask him what's wrong, instead of just punishing him for acting out. Before Miss Patterson could respond, Beverly suddenly stood up, wobbling dangerously. She grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. You know what? She announced. I need to use the bathroom. Where's the bathroom? Down the hall to the left, Miss Patterson said, pointing. Auntie Beverly nodded, then looked down at her feet. She seemed to notice for the first time that she was only wearing one shoe. She looked at the shoe in her hand, then at her feet, then back at the shoe, like she was trying to solve a complex math problem. I lost my other shoe, she said to no one in particular. Yes, you did, I said flatly. Well, I can't walk around with just one shoe. That's ridiculous. Then put that one on, I suggested. Beverly considered this, then bent down to put the shoe on her bare foot. She lost her balance and had to grab my shoulder to keep from falling. I could smell the alcohol on her breath, sour and strong. It made my stomach turn. After a struggle that seemed to last an eternity, she got the shoe on. Then she stood up, triumphant. There, she said. Now I'm ready. For what? I asked. For the bathroom. She pointed down the hall like she was embarking on a great adventure. I'll be right back. Don't make any decisions without me. And with that, she walked, or rather staggered, out of the classroom, bumping into the doorframe on her way out. Miss Patterson and I sat in stunned silence. Javon had his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. For a moment, I thought he was crying, but then I realized he was laughing, quietly, but definitely laughing. I'm so sorry, I said to Miss Patterson, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry. Miss Patterson shook her head. Mrs. Thompson, I think maybe we should definitely reschedule this meeting. This isn't productive for anyone. I nodded, too embarrassed to argue. You're right. I'm sorry. I should have known better than to bring her. Javon finally looked up, wiping his eyes. Mama, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. "It's not funny, Javon," I snapped. "It's embarrassing." "It's a little funny," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. And despite everything, despite the humiliation and the frustration and the absolute disaster this meeting had become, I felt something shift. Javon was smiling. For the first time in weeks, my son was actually smiling. Miss Patterson stood up. "Why don't you take your aunt home? Make sure she's okay, and we'll set up another meeting for next week." "Thank you," I said, standing up as well. "I really appreciate your patience." She nodded, though her smile was tight. "I understand family can be complicated." That was putting it mildly. Javon and I walked out of the classroom and found Auntie Beverly in the hallway, leaning against a locker, examining her fingernails. "You find the bathroom?" I asked. "Couldn't remember which way was left," she admitted. "Of course you couldn't." We walked out to the parking lot together, the three of us. The cool October air hit us as we stepped outside. Auntie Beverly took a deep breath. "That teacher seems nice," she said. "Beverly, you just embarrassed me in front of my son's teacher," I said, my voice tight with emotion. She looked at me, and for a moment, her eyes cleared. "I'm sorry, baby. I really am. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help." "You can't help when you're drunk," I said. "You can't help anyone when you're like this." She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I know. I know." We got to my car, and I opened the back door for her. She climbed in, moving slowly and carefully, like a person much older than she was. Javon got in the front seat, and I got behind the wheel. For a moment, we all just sat there in silence. Then Auntie Beverly spoke from the back seat, her voice small and sad. "Your mama would be so disappointed in me right now." My throat tightened. "Yeah," I said quietly. "She probably would be. But she also would have forgiven me," Beverly continued, "because that's what your mama did. She always forgave me, always gave me another chance." I looked at her in the rearview mirror. She was crying now, mascara running down her face in black rivers. "Mama's not here anymore," I said gently. "But I am. And I can't keep doing this, Beverly. I can't keep picking up the pieces. I can't keep making excuses. I can't keep bringing you around my kids when you're like this." "I know," she whispered. "You need help. Real help. I know. And until you get it, I think we need some space." She nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Okay. I understand." I started the car and drove her home in silence. When we got to her apartment building, a run-down brick structure on the west side that had seen better days about 40 years ago, I helped her out of the car and walked her to her door. "Are you going to be okay?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Yeah," she said. "I'll be fine. I'm always fine." But she wasn't fine. We both knew it. I hugged her, this woman who had been in my life since before I could walk, this woman who had loved me and my mama with everything she had, this woman who was slowly killing herself one drink at a time. "I love you," I whispered into her shoulder. "I love you too, baby," she said. "And I'm going to get better. I promise." It was a promise I'd heard before, but I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. I drove Javon home, and we sat in the car in our driveway for a few minutes, neither of us moving to get out. "Mama?" Javon said finally. "Yeah? Is Auntie Beverly going to be okay?" "I don't know, baby. I really don't know." "Why does she drink so much?" I thought about all the stories my mama had told me, about Raymond and the baby, and the broken dreams, about how sometimes people get hurt so badly they don't know how to heal. "Because she's sad," I said simply. "She's been sad for a very long time, and she doesn't know how to stop being sad." "That's not an excuse," Javon said. "No, it's not, but it's a reason." We went inside, and I paid Miss Lorraine and picked up Kiana, who was half asleep on Miss Lorraine's couch. I carried her to the car, her little arms wrapped around my neck, her breath warm against my shoulder. At home, I put Kiana to bed and then went to Javon's room. He was sitting on his bed, still in his school clothes, staring at nothing. "Can I come in?" I asked from the doorway. He nodded. I sat down next to him on the bed. "Javon, we need to talk. Really talk." I know. What's going on with you? Why are you acting out at school? He was quiet for a long time, and I didn't push him. I just waited, giving him space to find his words. Finally, he spoke. I'm mad, Mama. Mad about what? Everything. I'm mad that Dad left. I'm mad that you have to work all the time. I'm mad that Grandma died and I didn't get to say goodbye. I'm mad that we don't have money like other kids at school. I'm mad that I have to be the man of the house when I'm just a kid. I'm mad that nobody ever asks me how I'm doing. They just expect me to keep it together and do good in school and be respectful and act right, but nobody ever checks on me. His voice cracked on that last word, and my heart shattered into a million pieces. Baby, I whispered, pulling him into my arms. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He let me hold him, and then he started to cry. Really cry. The kind of crying that comes from deep in your soul. The kind that's been building up for months or years. I held him and let him cry, my own tears falling into his hair. I should have been checking on you, I said. I should have been asking. I've been so focused on making sure you have food and clothes and a roof over your head that I forgot to make sure you were okay up here. I tapped his chest, right over his heart. We sat there for a long time, just holding each other. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was actually connecting with my son. I'm going to do better, I promised him. I'm going to check on you more. I'm going to listen more. And we're going to figure this out together, okay? Okay, he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. And you have to promise me something too. What? You have to talk to me when you're feeling mad or sad or frustrated. You can't just hold it in and act out at school. You have to use your words. Can you do that? I'll try. That's all I ask. 2 weeks later, Auntie Beverly checked herself into rehab. She called me from the facility, her voice clear and sober for the first time in months. I'm doing it, Janelle, she said. I'm really doing it this time. For me, for you, for those babies, for your mama. I'm proud of you, I said. And I meant it. She's been sober for 6 months now. She comes to Sunday dinner every week. She babysits the kids. And this time, I trust her. She started going to AA meetings 5 times a week. She got a part-time job at a bookstore. She's even started writing poetry again, something she hadn't done since college. Last week, she showed me a poem she wrote about my mama. It was beautiful. It made me cry. Javon's doing better too. His grades are up. He's talking to me more. We started seeing a therapist together to work through some of the stuff we'd been ignoring for too long. Miss Patterson said he's been a model student, participating in class and helping other kids with their work. And me? I'm learning that being a good parent doesn't mean being perfect. It means showing up. It means listening. It means admitting when you're wrong and doing better next time. Because here's what I learned that night at the parent-teacher conference. Sometimes the biggest messes lead to the biggest breakthroughs. Sometimes the people who embarrass us the most are the ones who help us see the truth we've been avoiding. Sometimes rock bottom is the only place where real change can begin. Auntie Beverly showed up drunk to that parent-teacher conference. She stumbled in wearing one shoe, smelling like a bar, and made a complete fool of herself. But she also showed up. And in her own messy, broken way, she said something that needed to be said. She saw something in Javon that I'd been too busy to see. She recognized pain because she knew pain, and that moment of chaos, that absolute disaster of a meeting, became the catalyst for healing, for all of us. Family isn't perfect. Family is messy and complicated and sometimes shows up drunk to important meetings. But family also loves you when you're at your worst. Family tells you the truth even when it's hard to hear. Family gives you another chance, and another, and another, until you finally get it right. Auntie Beverly is family, real family, and I'm grateful for her, wig crooked and all. Because at the end of the day, we all need somebody who loves us enough to show up, even when they're falling apart. We all need somebody who sees us when we're drowning and throws us a lifeline, even if their own boat is sinking. And sometimes, the person you thought needed saving ends up being the one who saves you. Like this video if it touched something in you. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about what it means to be human, to be family, and to choose love even when it's complicated. I'll see you next time.